Welcome to the inaugural episode of the Golfonomics podcast. This week's key metric is 72 minutes. That is the average amount of time that small business owners spend per day working on social media. 72 minutes per day on social media. In this episode, we're going to get into if that's an effective use of 72 minutes, how you can evaluate if that 72 minutes is driving positive results to your business, and of course, what you can do to reduce that 72 minutes to achieve more results for less effort, which is the goal of running an efficient marketing operation. Today with us, we've got design and sales expert, Christian Wetzel. Hi, Christian.
Hey, how are you guys?
Good to have you.
Thank you
We've
so
got
much.
social media expert, Metolius agency manager, Katie Brando.
Hey, everyone.
And we've got marketing, automation, technology, analytics guru, Mr. Brian McCann.
Nerd here, checking in, reporting for duty. Hi, everyone.
All right, let's get into this. 72 minutes. According to a survey from Vertical Response, the majority of small businesses spend a minimum of 6 hours per week or 72 minutes per day working on social media. And today we're going to break that down. We're going to talk about if that is a good investment of time, how we can improve the return on that time investment. But I think the very first thing for us to talk about is 6 hours a week, 72 minutes a day, is that a lot of time to be investing in social media? Brian McCann, what do you think?
Wow. Well, as the marketing automation guy, I try to stay out of the social media as much as I can. So 6 hours sounds like a lot of time to me, but I'm going to guess it's not enough for like a true campaign. But I will kick it over to Katie, who heads up our agency services, because she has probably a much better answer than I do. Katie, what do you think?
Thank you, Brian. I think 6 hours is definitely a good place to start. If you're trying to do a large scale campaign, it might not be enough, but if you're starting just dipping your toes in the water, trying to get some post out, 6 hours is definitely a good place to start. Christian, what do you think?
A lot of time. What else could you do with 6 hours? As an operator, as a business owner, they wear a ton of different hats, and one of those hats doesn't have to be marketing and promotions. It could, or it could not, but the ability for them to, take that time, or at least chop it in half, chop it into a fraction of that, and get some of that time back. What could they do? What could an operator do? Ross, what do you think? You've worked with a ton of golf course operators out there. What else could they do with that time?
Well, I think it's a situation where operators have just had more and more tasks put on their list as we've sort of come through this information age in the last 10 or 15 years, and at the same time, up until 2020, the golf courses themselves have been, not in great shape from a revenue growth standpoint. So that's put even more pressure on those managers. So I think there's a lot of things that managers would like to do that they don't get a chance to do. I think one of those is probably social media. I think we see that a lot, that sort of falls off the end of the to-do list with other marketing functions or tasks. But I think, if those things weren't on a manager's to-do list, then they could spend more time working with their team. They could spend more time training for experience. They could spend more time interacting with their customers and doing all those little things that make an operation run efficiently, and that, building the team and creating that experience for the customer. So I think there's a lot that they can do, but I think, one thing for that I'd like to understand a little bit is, like, if we're investing 6 hours per week, 72 minutes a day in this area, is that driving a positive return to the business? Because at the end of the day, if you think about your time as a manager, or small business owner, which is what our golf course managers essentially are, if you think about your time, I mean, that's the most valuable commodity. And so every minute that you invest in whatever task or function you're performing at the golf course, you want to make sure that you're getting a positive return on that time. And so I think really the question of whether the 6 hours is worth it or not is really about what is that 6 hours driving to your business. And is there a better way you could invest that 6 hours, or could you outsource that 6 hours so that you don't have to do that, so you can spend your time on higher level functions? Like, those are all interesting questions that I think everybody should think about. But how do we evaluate the 6 hours of time on social media? Katie, what kind of things do you look at? I mean, where do you start if you're starting at 0-1 and we have a new client that comes on board and they don't have a Facebook or Instagram page? Like, what's step one?
Step one with a new client, or really anyone starting out on social media or just reviving your social media, is really to define your purpose. Why are you on social media, and what are your goals? If it's to book online tea times, if it's to build your brand, fantastic. But whatever it is, you just have to identify that piece, and really focus in on that. Don't try to wear all hats. Focus in on one or two topics, and I think that's definitely an awesome place to start.
So we shouldn't start by just saying we're going to post to post.
Well, I think there's a few different schools of thought here. Of course, it's good to post, but posting with intention is better than posting just to post. Christian, I know you have some thoughts there. What do you think?
Your competitors are doing it. So, the whole idea of not having a presence on there is no longer an answer, right? I mean, just thinking about it from that perspective, right? People that don't have intent, as you referenced, Katie. Sure, yeah, they're just putting stuff up there. Is that doing something? Is that moving the needle in some way, shape, or form? Sure, but is it doing it at the rate it should be? Brian, what do you think about that post to post?
Spending 6 hours a day posting to post. I mean, that's just like it's just bad. That's a bad strategy. I think if you
It's
think
no
about
strategy, right?
It's no strategy. I mean, but
Exactly.
Like, if we're looking at time, right? Like if you're filling that 6 hours with just posting to post, like what are you doing? I mean, essentially, if you look at that, like if I'm going to be blunt, like you're wasting time on social media, right? Like without any direction or result. Like if I'm your boss, let's say, or if I'm the owner, and I see that they're like posting to post, but I'm like, well, what are we seeing? Are we seeing growth? Are we seeing engagement? Are we seeing revenue? Like, is this worth it? Because if it's 6 hours of your 40-hour work week, or let's be honest, some of our GMs are probably working 60 plus. So 10% of your work week is going to this thing without a return. Like, I'm going to throw up some red flags if that's what you're doing without like any actionable item. But I do sympathize with your thing, like everyone else is doing it. So I think I have to do something. But that said, you can make that something, that 6 hours, more impactful with a strategy, with a purpose, with intent.
And I think not only can you make the time investment more impactful with a plan, right? I mean, obviously it's going to be more impactful. And you can make it measurable. If you develop some measurable goals, you can actually determine what your ROI on is. But I'd actually argue it's easier to execute the strategy if you actually have a plan. And I think about, if I'm sitting down to write a blog post or something like that, it's a whole heck of a lot easier if I have a plan going into that and an outline and a structure of what I want to talk about in that blog post, as opposed to sitting down in front of a blank sheet of paper. There's so many directions to go. The mind is just overwhelmed. Where if you actually have a strategy, then it narrows down the options of what you can post, and you can probably do it more efficiently.
So just posting Tiger Woods memes is not effective?
I mean, it's effective at driving impressions, and possibly you can turn some of that engagement into revenue. But if you don't have a plan to turn that engagement into revenue, then you're just posting to post. And sure, you're going to get a little SEO value out of it because the search engines are going to see that you're active on social media, and they're going to bump your website up a little bit for search results. But that's the long tail. There's definitely some more effective ways to spend the time. Katie, do you have any examples of really effective campaigns that you've been a part of?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think most recently, a really effective campaign that we've run for a public golf course is surrounded all around couples golf. Right now, couples golf is huge, really, I think across the board. Getting involved, getting out on a Friday night with your spouse and just enjoying a night on the golf course. So with that, social media campaigns, email blasts, tying it all together with email and social, I think is huge. And doing just, one social media post about it isn't really going to move the needle. It's a few social media posts. It might be some paid advertising that we can get into here a little bit later, but it needs to be more than just one post if you want to be effective.
Yeah,
Oh.
consistency, right?
Absolutely.
What a wild idea to have like a marketing plan, right? And I think so often that social media gets strapped on or buckled in at the last second and it's forgotten about, right? Because you might have all of these things that are part of your plan. And then someone's like, hey, we need to be on social media or we need to do something. And like without a strategy, like how often have we run into it where it's you turn the keys over to your digital empire to the young person who, is in the pro shop or, out like in the cart shed or, at the range picking, and like, sure, they can generate content. Sure, they're like digitally native and can figure it out, but it's just a missed opportunity, right? Because then
But they know how to use Snapchat.
Yeah, but then they go to college and then it's on their phone and you can't find them. Like,
Yeah, nobody can get into your accounts, and then you got
you got to release the admin rights.
you got to create a new account and you got two accounts. I mean, like we've seen it so many times.
The club at and the club of.
Let's circle back to this couples thing, because I think maybe we missed something in there. But so if couples is a strategy, right? Obviously, there's a direct ROI evaluation that you can make on how many people sign up from couples. And if you've got conversion tracking and all that sort of stuff set up, then that becomes really, really easy. But there's also a function of if you're going to focus on couples, right? Katie, you don't create a different couples post every single week, right?
No, definitely not. I think that's where templates really come into play for us. And for listeners out there, if you're not using templates for your reoccurring events, definitely dive into that and do some research. It saves so much time. For that, they just have, 4 or 5 templates that you rotate weekly to get those posts out there. And then at that point, once you have those 4 or 5 posts created, you can just schedule those out reoccurring. And that 6 hours just hopefully slowly goes down to 5 hours or 4 hours. And you can really save time by just planning in advance.
And once it's done, you don't have to do it again until next year.
Exactly. You get those registration links all linked up in the post, in the email, and you are good. You're set for the season.
Hey, Christian, in your graphic design expertise, I know that sometimes in our industry, right, templates is a bad word and people want everything to be perfectly custom. You're a professional designer, right? That's one of your key areas of expertise. If you have a 16-week couple season and you have 4 different graphics that each go out once per month in 4 consecutive months, do you see any downside to that from the user perspective, or is that sort of just a myth that we've invented?
I really don't. I mean, I think that the whole template concept makes you faster, quicker, better at adapting. When you do have a good set of templates going, you can just make minor tweaks and adjustments to certain elements of that template and just really be pretty dynamic. Now, it might have the same theme or look, but it might have a little bit different information, or it obviously would contain, the revised date of the event or the promotion. So, I mean, I think templates is a great way to kind of streamline what you're doing, how you're doing it, and the time that is taking to do all of that together.
Yeah, and I think if you have any hesitation, if you're listening to this and you have any hesitation about duplicating content or using content more than once, just think about how many times you've seen the same television commercial over and over again. How many times you've seen the same advertisement in a magazine over and over again. Like, I mean, sure, creating a unique television commercial every time that Ford wants to show one, there might be a benefit to that, but the people that are running the Ford advertising campaigns, they know what they're doing. And, it's certainly not up to anybody on this call to tell them that their strategies have been terrible. They're doing all right. I read this morning that the F-150 has been the number 1 selling car in America for 40 years.
Straight.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
And President Biden just drove the brand new electric one yesterday too.
It's a whole new world we're living in. So we've kind of made a natural segue here. I mean, I think on the front end of the equation, when we're talking about the 6 hours a week, the first thing that we want to evaluate is this 6 hours a week doing something for the business? And I think, we've talked about the first step there is identify what your purpose is. Once you identify your purpose, then you can actually measure your impact, measure the return on investment of that time that you're putting in. But there's a whole nother side of the ROI equation, which we just sort of dipped our toe into, which is, could we achieve the same result by investing less time? And that's where I think there are some pretty straightforward and easy to use tools and strategies that can really make that happen. So I'm going to go back to our social media expert here. Katie, what's your top tip?
Top tip. That's a hard one because I think I have quite a few, but I would probably really start with batching your time and batching your content. And what I mean by that is pick a task, pick a time, and sit down and dedicate yourself to that. So if you're going back to couples golf, if we're going to work on a couples golf promotion for the entire summer, it's happening every single Friday night. Block out an hour of your schedule, shut your door, and don't answer phone calls, and take that 30 minutes and really dive into couples golf. Get those ads, get the content created around it. When it's happening, what time it's happening, and where people can sign up. So sit down, create the content. And then once that's done, using a scheduling tool to schedule that all out can really, really optimize your time. Brian, I know you probably have some feedback here. What do you think?
Well, I just want to jump in because you're talking about batching, which I think is a strategy to use for anything that you do, right? Like if you want to create efficiency, this goes beyond just creating awesome social media posts. Like batching when you answer emails, doing all this stuff is going to add up and save you time, right? Versus moving from task to task, switching and getting lost. So I think, pointing that out right away, I think it was key. But another thing is I want people to know that you're not sitting in your ivory tower of agency with all these fancy tools and, an army of people doing social media. You've worked this, you've been the person at the property responsible for this. So rewinding the clock a little bit and going back to when you wore that hat before you became master of the Matoli social media universe. How did you do this at the property level, and where did you find that time, to really work and create content?
That's a great question, Brian. Finding time when you're working at a facility is not easy. I think that's arguably the hardest part of the job, is figuring out how to develop your time and distribute it amongst all of your tasks. For me, I found the most success on the weekends, because it's one of those things you just have to be there on the weekend. Somebody has to be there and saying hi, walking around, touching tables, checking out the first tee, who's there. You just have to be there. And on Saturday and Sunday, I wasn't really into answering phone calls and being incredibly active on my email. So it was a great time to just shut the door and lock in on social media and really focus my time in on what I needed to get done for that week, that month. And that really allowed me to take that content and schedule it out weeks in advance, which in turn just saved me so much time. My GM was thrilled. So it overall worked really well. Christian, what do you think?
Well, I think you made a lot of great points, but I was kind of going to ask the group, as far as time management and effectiveness and scheduling of posts and things of that nature, what are some of your guys' favorite applications or software to use for that? Russ?
So we use a couple of different softwares to manage both the communication, the marketing calendar, marketing plan in itself, and then we use a scheduling software, and then we use some design software as well. So I'll let Katie talk about that. But I think one thing that I wanted to mention and I didn't is that we're talking about this having a plan and batching your content, and I know the word marketing plan is often really daunting to people, and they think it needs to be this 40-page perfect. It doesn't need to be that complicated. We work with every one of our clients on a marketing plan that's literally, it's a little fancier than this, but it's essentially an Excel spreadsheet. It's not, it's in a project management tool, but it works sort of like an Excel spreadsheet. And it just has a line for every objective that you have. And then we just add activities that are associated with those objectives, and whether they're email strategies or social media strategies or website strategies, right? It doesn't have to be super complicated. It can be as simple as just a bullet point list, just so everybody can rally around a common set of goals and ideas. And that's just going to make everything better. So I think develop that marketing plan, but don't psych yourself out with it. You should be able to do it in 15 minutes. Like it really doesn't need to be a big complicated thing. You just need to get something down on paper and make it happen. But I'll turn it back over to Katie to talk about some of the specific tools that we use.
Got to jump in before Katie goes back to the tools
Unacceptable.
because I have to drop a bomb on this podcast. So if you're listening and you're still like, I don't believe Ross, he's full of it, one-page marketing plan, there is a book. It is called The One-Page Marketing Plan. And I know people recommend marketing books all the time. It is one of the best marketing books I've ever read. It covers the basics, it covers strategy, and the end result after reading the book is you will have a one-page marketing plan. And it's like $2 or free if you're an Amazon Prime member. We'll drop the link in the show notes. It is a must-read for all marketing professionals or anyone who's sort of interested or daunted by marketing.
Brian, how many pages is the book about the one-page marketing plan?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I don't think it's more than a couple, like it can't be more than 200 pages. It's probably less than that for sure.
I was hoping you were going to say it was a one-page book about a one-page marketing plan.
No, because the author, Alan Dibb, also needs to prove his worth and then, sell his other services. I mean, he's giving this thing away for free as a lead magnet, which is a totally separate podcast about lead generation.
Oh yeah,
But-
we'll get into that.
But I just wanted to drop that nugget for people who are like, how do you do this? You could also call us and we'd be happy to show you how.
Well, that's another good reminder that we'll have links to all these things that we've discussed attached to the podcast for the listeners out there.
Yeah. So, okay. So as far as the way that we approach these tools, so the first thing is our project management software, which houses the marketing calendar and the objectives and the purpose of the social media. So that's kind of the plan, what we use for the planning phase and communication. So then what's the next step in the process, Katie, and what do you use?
So once we have a good plan in place, Ross, we then take that information, everything that we've brainstormed, and we put that together into some type of graphic. And for that, we use canva.com, which if you're a GM out there, I'm sure you've heard of it. It's an amazing free tool. And I'll say it. I think Canva is the best free design tool out there for you to use. The free version is fantastic. The paid version is even better. And I think it's just about $12 a month if anyone's out there interested. But you can do tons of different things. They have templates for you to use. So if you just want to throw your logo on something and add a new picture, change the date, they've got it. So we use Canva. And that is a huge time saver and a great tool for us. And then once we get that content created and we go through the approval process with our clients, we then use a scheduling tool called Agora Pulse. Very similar to Hootsuite, Sprout Social. There's several different ones out there. We've dialed it down and did quite a bit of research at the beginning of all of this, and we chose Agora Pulse mostly. And probably the big reason why we chose it was that they have this fantastic listening feature. So we can be your eyes and ears out there on social media as well. But that's probably for another day.
Let's parking lot. I want to come back to the listening. So let's parking lot that for just a sec. So define your purpose, design it, schedule it, and then you're done, right?
Not quite. Not quite. That's where the listening comes in, Ross. You have to, once you put it out there, you can't forget about it. People are out there and they're interacting with your content. And that would, just be like somebody walking into your pro shop after their round and saying to the kid at the counter, thanks for having us today. This was fantastic. The greens rolled great. We can't wait to come back. And they're just sitting there on their phone, not paying attention. It's totally gaslighting them. You need to engage. You need to respond to those comments on social media and say thanks or answer some questions or point them in the right direction. So I think listening and engaging is the final step there.
So if I was going to go ahead,
Oh,
Christian.
Yeah, I was going to just say, so social media is not a one-way street, right?
Not at all.
Not at all. Okay.
Oh, that's why social's in the name of it.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure we all have that friend that, it's a one-way street and they don't last as your friend that long, right? You have to give and you have to take.
See, every day you learn something new on the Golfonomics podcast. All right. So listening and that two-way communication is obviously a really important aspect of things. Okay. So let's say, and we're going to wrap this up here really shortly, but let's say we've done a good job. We've got our purpose. We're good to go. We've done a good job designing, so it's appealing and it represents our brand in a good way. Good. We've got it scheduled. We're batching our content, so we're working well ahead of the posting date. We're doing a good job listening and interacting with those people that are engaging with our posts and sending us messages and commenting and sharing our posts. So then, right, everybody's going to see all of our content and our golf course is going to be overrun, right, Brian?
I got some bad news for you.
Uh-oh.
This is a stat that we will break down in a future episode, but here it is. On average, your Facebook posts reach 5.2% of your followers. So
5.2?
5.2%, which is not a lot. Listen, I am the marketing analytics automation guy, so I spend a lot of time in the numbers, and I know that this whole thing is a war of attrition, right? Like we talk about email open rates, It's like percentages, it's going down. So if it's 5.2% that are just seeing your post organically, which means it just shows up, like you can guarantee, like some of these other things we talked about, like posting the same image, not a big deal, right? Because not a lot of people are seeing it. So like repeating content, no big worries. But we will get into this like analytics deep dive, talking about the numbers in a future episode. But yeah, it's a whole nother ball of wax. But yeah, this is the front end. You need to take care of this stuff first, and then you got it. And then the next step is like, let's talk about numbers and how to make those numbers better.
Awesome. All right. Final thoughts here before we do the go around at the end. Anybody? Okay. Christian?
I would just say be diligent, be effective with your time. Block out your time, batch your time, as Katie said.
Yeah. On that note, I would say be patient, especially if you're new to social media or you're taking over social media, maybe because someone else at the facility is gone, and like now you're GM and you're wearing this hat, and you're like, oh great, something else I've got to worry about. Just know that like you putting in the work now is going to pay off. Putting in the time, and so maybe you don't get to 6 hours this week, but showing up, start being consistent on social media, posting, everything else, like it comes with time. Like no one just gets 20,000 followers overnight. Like that just doesn't happen. I mean, we talk about virality a lot, but it's just not the case. Like it comes from being consistent, and then you find a nerve, and then that's when the magic happens. So just be patient, and to Christian's point, batch it. I think is great. It's a great way to do that.
Katie, what's your tip?
I think my final tip is to go off of what Brian said here and be consistent with your posting and be patient, but also be consistent with that communication back to your customers. If you're taking the time to post on social media and they're taking the time to comment back, they want to know more either about an upcoming event. They want to let you know what they think about the course conditions or your staff or the food and beverage operations, whatever it is. They're out there and they're having a conversation with you. So don't ignore them. Make sure you're present and consistently commenting and engaging with those customers.
Ross, final thoughts. What are you going to say?
I think my tip is when you're thinking about this 6 hours or whatever amount of time that you're investing in social media every week, in your head, don't think about that time as getting your posts done for the next week. Think about it from a project standpoint. So this week, my social media objective is to get couples wine and nine done for the rest of the year. And then next week to get my tea time reminder posts done for the rest of the year. And if you batch that way, eventually you're going to get to a week and you're like, I got everything scheduled for the rest of the year. I don't have to invest the 6 hours anymore. So that would be my main tip. And then of course I have to say, or you could do none of any of those things and you could just hire Metolius to handle this for you. So that's everything that we have today. I hope y'all learned something, one little thing. We hope you can take some of these tips back to your facility and be more effective, more efficient, save a little time. That's our whole mission. And we'll see you all next week where we're going to dive into this 5.2% metric and why only 1 out of every 20 people that follow your page actually see your content. And most importantly, what you can actually do about that. So thanks everybody. And we'll see you on the next episode.